Our next Ask Dana question is, what is the perennial philosophy and why is it relevant today? The perennial philosophy is a position that was forwarded by Aldous Huxley, Houston Smith, Stanislav Grof, Alan Watts, Gene Houston, today by Ken Wilber, and lots of other philosophers. In 1945, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Perennial Philosophy, and that laid out the basic position, which held that if we look across the very different religions of the world, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Confucianism, we find tremendous difference, tremendous diversity. For instance, they don't hold the same beliefs. Buddhists believe there is no creator God. Jews and Christians believe there is a creator God. They're not believing the same thing, and there are lots of differences like that. But Aldous Huxley argued that if we looked at the writings of the mystics in the various traditions, if we look at Rumi and the Sufi tradition of Islam, if we look at Shantideva in Buddhism, if we look at Shankara in Hinduism, Meister Eckhart, Teresa of Avila in the Christian tradition, we start to see something like parity. And what he meant was the mystics seemed to be saying something very similar, even though the religions that they grew up in are saying very different things. And what is it that they're saying in common? First of all, that they're saying that there is this noetic experience that they've had. We can define it broadly as unity with the divine principle, that they've felt this tremendous sense of interconnection with reality, a oneness with reality, and an interbeing with everything in reality, and sometimes a melting into nothingness, everythingness, that Meister Eckhart called the ground of being. So this is a basic premise, that there is this way of knowing that some people have a real talent for and have had these awakenings, but that there are also techniques for cultivating such awakenings. Meditation, for example, yoga, for example. Some people today say sensory deprivation tanks and even psychedelic drugs. So there are practices we can do. In the Buddhist tradition, shamatha, for example, calm abiding meditation, where we have these moments of awakening, what the psychologist Abraham Maslow, who was himself a perennial philosopher, called peak experiences. So the relevance of this viewpoint for spirituality today, I see, first of all, that it's very relevant, because we see in this fast-growing demographic that we call spiritual but not religious, a premium being placed on experiential religion, that religion should help me grow, help me self-actualize. Abraham Maslow talked about a hierarchy of needs, that human beings have basic needs like food and shelter, and we have higher needs like the desire to love and be loved. But at the apex of his pyramid of needs, he put self-actualization, that we are physical beings, but we're also spiritual beings, and there's a level of self-actualization that our spirit is crying out for. In fact, Maslow argued a lot of people in our culture today are neurotic and depressed and struggling out of a frustrated desire to self-actualize. Today, we see people increasingly not so much wanting to be in a congregation with a sage on a stage, as we used to say, but a congregation that sits in a circle and are co-seekers or co-learners. So people are increasingly going to institutes like the Esalen Institute, the Omega Institute, retreat centers like Kripalu, down in Massachusetts. I call it Search Church. You're going there not to get the answers, but to get different ideas about what the answers might be to help in your own journey. So as we see the Search Church phenomenon, this demographic of spiritual but not religious growing, then I think the perennial philosophy is deeply relevant. If you're interested in reading more about it, the book I would most recommend is Forgotten Truth by Houston Smith. It's a very short, very good introduction to the perennial philosophy. Okay, there's my answer.